The subject tonight is not the conflict of the world. It is the compulsion within you to become a part of it. Now just try to follow this, because the mind is trained, it is well drilled, to believe that only two options exist, for this or against that. Speak now or be branded silent. Take a stand or be judged complicit. You know that pressure. It is in the news feed, in the family table, in the workplace hallway, and most painfully, in the inner voice that says, "Choose, or you are nobody." And so we grow tired. Tired not merely of opinions, but of being recruited by fear masquerading as duty. Please remember this. The weariness you feel is not because conflict is loud. It is because you have believed that your peace depends upon a side winning. Now then, here is the contrarian opening of this work, and it will sound strange until it becomes your air. The first healing is not in changing the conflict, but in ending the inner compulsion to join it as a side. Oh, no, do not misunderstand. This is not apathy. This is not passivity. This is not cowardice hiding behind pious phrases. This is the refusal to let the world's binary mind define your conscience. This is the quiet establishment of an inner government. Spirit, not reaction. God as one power, not two powers in struggle. Actually, there is no relationship between spirit and the world's sides. They are entirely separate and distinct realms of reliance. One deals in fear and leverage. The other is peace itself. And you cannot be governed by both. Please remember, you do not end war by finding the better side. You end war, first in yourself, by refusing the premise that there are two powers contending for you. The mind will protest, but my silence makes me guilty. Oh, no. We are not teaching silence. We are teaching source. We are not withholding your voice. We are purifying your dependency. When you are no longer driven by the anxiety of choosing, you are free to be led. Led to speak or to be still, to act or to wait, but always from peace, never from pressure. There is a strange relief in this refusal. You may feel it even now, a loosening around the heart, because you are allowing yourself to step out of a courtroom you never belonged in. Judge, jury, executioner, none of these are your office. My peace, not their agreement, is your mandate. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. From that center, you will find that you can meet your family's disputes without becoming their instrument of division. You can love truth in the public square without worshiping a party. You can serve at your work without entering personal warfare. That is the promise of our time together. A way to stand in a world of storms and not be of its weather. To carry peace as evidence, and to let spirit, not sides, govern your going out and your coming in. Now just try to follow this, because here is the sharp edge upon which the whole work stands or falls. The world presents to you two realms braided together, spirit and conflict, as if they were opposite poles of one continuum, and it cries, "Choose the better pole and push." Actually, there is no relationship between the two. They are entirely separate and distinct. Spirit is not the honored half of a pair. Spirit is the whole, the only, the one. What appears as conflict, division, outrage, retaliation is not a second something contending with God. Oh, no. It is a suggestion, a mesmerism, a hypnotism of mind seeking your consent, seeking your belief, seeking your breath to give it life. Please remember this, because until you see it, you will continue to be recruited. Behind the urgency to side is the hidden creed of two powers. It whispers, "There is danger out there and safety over here. Lend us your heart, your voice, your identity, and we will protect you." And the moment you lend yourself, you have accepted not only a position, but a premise. That there is a power apart from God to fear, and a separate power you must embrace to be safe. Can you see the idolatry? You have enthroned a second power and begged a third to defeat it. That is the beginning of war in you. Now then, the axiom of this way is simple, absolute, and it does not bend for circumstance. God is the only power, not most power, only. If God is the only power, what then is conflict? It cannot be a power. It cannot be a law. It cannot be a cause. It is a claim about power, a lie told with enough volume to sound like law, a mirage projected on the screen of sense to induce reaction. If you grant it power by reacting as if it were power, it will command you. If you refuse it power by resting in the one, it dissolves as a claim and loses the right to dictate your conscience. My kingdom is not of this world. That is not poetry. That is metaphysics. Taking no side, then, is not neutrality between human contestants. It is fidelity to the one. You will still be led to speak or to act, but not to worship a banner. You will be guided, but not recruited. You do not end war by choosing the better power. You end war by refusing the premise of two powers. You take your stand where no opposite is, and from that altitude, oh, that holy altitude that is not above people but above the premise, the light judges, the light corrects, the light protects, and if there must be action, it is action born of peace, not of pressure. Hold this now, not as a slogan, but as breath itself. God is. God is. God is, and that's enough to know. Now then, before we proceed any further, let us clear the fog around this phrase, "take no side." Because unless you understand what it is not, you will either abuse it or reject it. Take no side is not indifference, not apathy, not moral laziness, not excusing harm, not pretending that injustice is acceptable, not avoiding action when action is required. Oh, no, no, no. Taking no side is not turning your back on the suffering neighbor. It is turning your back on the world's method of sustaining suffering, two-power thinking, and then letting spirit direct you to the neighbor with a clean hand and a clear word. Please remember this. If God is the only power, then conscience must be rooted there, not in the tremors of public outrage. I know the fear that rises. If I don't take a side, I am betraying my values. Listen closely. Values without spirit become weapons. The very words you cherish, justice, compassion, truth, when torn loose from the root, become banners under which you may march long after you have lost the presence. And then your value becomes your permission to hate. Do you see? A value in reaction is not virtue. It is vanity in armor. But a value in spirit is not a tool you swing. It is a light that reveals, guides, and corrects. One can quote truth in hatred and make it a lie. One can whisper truth in love and make it a law. Now follow this. Human opinion reacts. Spiritual discernment listens. Opinion must be quick. It must answer, strike, divide, because its life depends upon opposition. Discernment waits in the stillness, not to be clever, but to be led. Be still and know that I am God. That is not a poet's consolation. That is operational guidance. In that stillness, you will hear which word belongs to God and which belongs to your fear. Please remember, we as disciples are not being trained to become brilliant arguers. We are being trained to become transparent instruments. Siding often feels like righteousness because it gives the ego warmth, belonging, identity, the sweet narcotic of being right. But it functions as attachment. It needs an enemy to stay alive. The moment your goodness requires a villain to certify it, you have left the one and entered the marketplace of comparisons. Oh, the arm of flesh loves this trade. It says, "Give me a foe, and I will give you a self." And you accept, and war is born in you. One power does not traffic in that economy. Here is the ethical pivot. We can refuse sides and still refuse evil. How? By refusing to hate, refusing to dehumanize, refusing to be manipulated by fear, while standing immovably in light. We do not enthrone hatred as a second power in order to oppose harm. We enthrone God as the only power, and let that realization strip evil of its borrowed authority. Then, if action is required, it will be clean, firm without fury, clear without cruelty, because it proceeds from peace rather than from panic. Remember, taking no side is not the absence of conscience. It is conscience anchored in spirit, not in reaction. God is. God is my conscience, my peace, my direction. And from that, we move, not as partisans in a storm, but as witnesses to the one who quiets the wind and the sea. My peace, my peace. That is our authority. Now just try to follow this, because here is the mechanism by which war multiplies in you. The instant you take a side, you have accepted the arm of flesh as your security. What is the arm of flesh? Force, fear, cleverness and strategy, loudness, leverage, and the exhausting vigilance of always having to be one step ahead. It promises safety. It offers quick victories. It whispers, if we are sharper, louder, tougher, we will prevail. But please remember, the arm of flesh cannot produce peace. It can achieve positions. It can trade advantages. It can win headlines. But it cannot yield the stillness that testifies to God. Actually, there is no relationship between spirit and that method. They are entirely separate and distinct. Spirit requires no enemy in order to be itself. The arm of flesh must keep an enemy alive, or it loses its purpose. Now then, the internal cost is precise and cruel. When you join a side, the side begins to live as you. Your pronouns change. We, ours, they, theirs. And without noticing it, you slip from loving truth to defending tribe. Then any question sounds like an attack. Any nuance sounds like treason. Any honest seeing feels like self-betrayal. Do you know that feeling? The heartbeat quickens. The throat tightens. You are no longer asking, what is God revealing? You are asking, how do I protect my place? Oh, no, no, no. This is not conscience. This is identity panic. And identity panic will sacrifice peace for the cheapest reassurance available. Being right. Watch how the mind, once conscripted, manufactures its proofs. Confirmation bias parades as discernment. Selective outrage arranges the stage. My hurts in the spotlight, yours behind the curtain. We gather posts like ammunition. We quote selectively. We edit memory. We distribute blame with surgical precision that always leaves us clean. The righteous pleasure of condemning the other becomes our daily bread, bitter but stimulating. Statistics are conscripted, slogans baptized, scriptures weaponized. We pray not to commune, but to secure heaven's blessing on our campaign. And then we wonder why our prayers agitate instead of quiet. Please remember, the mind cannot manufacture the evidence of peace. Peace is the evidence. Now hear the world versus disciple line clearly, because it will save you much grief. The world lives by taking sides. The disciple lives by abiding in one presence. The world must have enemies to stay coherent. The disciple abides where no opposite is. Can we really doubt that most wars continue because each side believes God is on its side? Of course that is so. But let us correct it. God is not on sides. God is. My kingdom is not of this world. To try to draft God into faction is to disfigure God and to doom our cause to the same instability that birthed it. And that is the point. The moment you seek safety in a side, you trade the peace of spirit for the instability of human power. You accept a life of alarms, victory today, retaliation tomorrow, applause now, fear at night. The arm of flesh demands constant feeding, more outrage, more vigilance, more proof that we are the good ones. There is no rest there, none. But there is rest in one. When you feel the sweet pull of being right, stop and ask, is this my safety, or is God my safety? If the answer is a banner, you are already trembling. If the answer is presence, you are already home. God is, and that's enough to know. My peace. My peace. Now just try to follow this, because here the road narrows to a single step. The only choice that ends the inner war is not between this side or that side, not between being louder or cleverer, but between spirit and reaction. One must make a choice of one or the other. Not spirit plus reaction, not prayer plus outrage. Actually, there is no relationship between the two. They are entirely separate and distinct ways of being, and you cannot drink from both wells and expect the water to be sweet. Please remember this point, because if you miss it, you will try to sanctify your agitation with a scripture and call it holiness. Oh, no, no, no. Reaction is a false sacrament. It promises control. It offers the feeling of movement. It gives you a ritual. Post, reply, rebut, rally. And at the end of it, where is your peace? It is spent as fuel to keep the fire burning. Reaction is bondage disguised as urgency. It says, if you do not answer right now, you will lose. Lose what? Your true life? That cannot be lost. Reaction can only take what it gave, the thrill, the panic, the identity it manufactured for you in a hurry. Spirit is another country entirely. Spirit does not bribe, does not frighten, does not recruit. Spirit reveals. Spirit governs. Spirit is the one power. If God is the only power, then reaction is not a lesser power to be managed. It is a lie about power to be refused. And the refusal is not willpower, not grit. It is surrender to what is already true. Now then, how do we choose in the moment? Not by thinking up a better argument, not by squeezing the fists and calling it discipline. The choice is enacted as a pause, a holy, simple pause. Relax both mentally and physically in the assurance that here and now God is. Stop, even for 10 seconds, and turn within, not to debate, but to witness. Let the body sag out of its armor. Let the breath come home. Let the words, "Be still and know that I am God," not be poetry, but practice. And watch what happens to the storm in you when light is allowed to look at it. Agitation cannot survive exposure to awareness. It feeds on your agreement. Withdraw agreement. Let it burn out, not by suppression, but by lack of oxygen. God is. God is. God is. Please notice how the mind and body begin to settle when the premise shifts from "I must" to "I am." The victory, then, is not that you win the argument. The victory is that the argument cannot win you. You may still speak, you may still act, but you will not be acting as a conscript of panic. You will be acting as a witness of the One. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit. And because it is by Spirit, the deed will be clean, the word will be clear, and the aftertaste will be peace, not regret. This is the test. After you post, after you speak, after you decide, what remains? If it is peace, you have chosen correctly. My peace, not their agreement. My peace. The war ends in you when you refuse reaction as your power and rest in spirit as the only power. God is, and that's enough to know. Now just try to follow this, because here the practice must become as simple as breath, or you will lose it in the very moment you need it. The holy pause is not a technique to win an argument. It is the refusal to be recruited into the two-power trance. Please remember this. The mind will try to turn it into a clever maneuver. If I pause, I'll come back with a sharper point. Oh, no, no, no. We are not sharpening points. We are laying down arms. We are not arranging better human leverage. We are returning to the one presence. God is, and that's enough to know. Now then, the inner discipline is stepwise, but not mechanical. First, stop speaking inwardly. This means stop composing the rebuttal, stop rehearsing what you will say to them next time, stop staging the courtroom where you play judge and they play defendant. Second, stop feeding the fire. Do not scroll for more outrage. Do not summon your archive of grievances. Let the woodpile remain untouched. Third, replace the commentary with a single recognition. Here and now, God is. Not later, not after they apologize, not after you win the point. Here and now, God is. Whisper it if you must. Think it as breath if you can. Please remember the one power check, because it will save you countless descents into panic. If you feel fear, if you feel that shaking demand to secure yourself by attack or defense, you are believing in another power. That is all fear is, faith in a second God. The correction is not argument. The correction is recognition. Turn within and admit, only one is, only one acts, only one governs. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw unclench. Let the grip on your opinion loosen, not to abandon truth, but to release idolatry. Here is a micro-meditation you can carry into the heat of the hallway and the glare of the screen. 10 to 20 seconds only. 1 or 2 conscious breaths, slow, unforced. On the in-breath, receive, God is. On the out-breath, release, I do not need to fix. Then listen, just listen, without words. as if you were giving the invisible a chance to speak its own word. No bargaining, no timetable, just the willingness to be present to presence. Be still and know. That is all. Do not use this to suppress emotion. Oh, no, no, no. Suppression is another side-taking, the side against your own heart. Let the anger, the grief, the electric tremor be seen, but do not obey it. Watch like light watches a wave. In the seeing, without agreement, the wave spends itself. Agitation cannot live without your consent. And now the law of operation. Peace precedes wisdom. When peace is present, right action appears of itself. Perhaps a word, perhaps a silence, perhaps a firm boundary set without venom. When peace is absent, action is only reaction in costume. So test it in secret. After the pause, do you taste my peace? If yes, move. If no, wait. God is. God is. God is. From that one, let your next step come. Now just try to follow this. Because when the warfare of sides comes to your doorstep, it does not wear a uniform. It wears familiar faces and uses tender words. If you love me, you will see it my way. The family triangle is as old as fear. One calls you to prove loyalty by condemning another. The other pleads for rescue by disproving the first. And you, if you do not know the principle, become the courtroom where they fight the case. Please remember this. The moment you agree to be judge or jury, you have accepted two powers into the home. Harmony is made to depend upon someone being right enough and someone being wrong enough. And we build a shrine to blame and call it family peace. Oh, no, no, no. That is idolatry. Placing our trust in verdicts rather than in the one presence. Now then, here is the stand that ends your conscription without abandoning your love. Let your first move be silent. One breath inward, and the recognition, God is. One presence, one power, one love here. Do not rush to words while you are still trembling. Tone is the first sermon spoken in a house. Let the jaw unclench, let the shoulders drop, and then let your words carry spirit instead of side. You may say, quietly and clearly, I'm not here to take sides. I'm here to bring peace, clarity, and what is true. Please remember, that is not neutrality between egos. That is fidelity to God. The mind will protest. But if I refuse a side, I will be trampled. Oh, no, no, no. Taking no side is not becoming a doormat. It is becoming a doorway for light. Boundaries from spirit are clean, never cruel. They do not punish, they protect. They may sound like this: I love you both. I will not be a messenger of hurt between you. Or, we can speak when we're ready to do it without contempt. Or, if voices rise, I will pause and step away, and I will return when peace is possible. Notice the form: firm without venom, clear without superiority. Contempt enthrones a second power. Clarity witnesses the one. Now follow this. Do not let secret alliances form in the shadows. Refuse the whisper campaigns. I will not keep confidences that injure someone not present. If it concerns them, we will include them. That is not betrayal. That is protection of the temple from the traffic of grievance. And where there is genuine harm, yes, we act, we intervene, we shield the vulnerable. but we do so without hatred, for hatred is the world's security system and has no authority in the household of God. A soft answer turneth away wrath, not because softness is weak, but because it refuses to feed the fire. Practice the one power check in the heat of the kitchen conversation. If the heart races, if the demand to win surges, admit it. I am believing in another power. Withdraw consent. Breathe. God is. God is. God is. Then let the next word arise. Sometimes it will be a question that opens a window. Sometimes it will be silence that diffuses a charge. Sometimes it will be a decisive no that sets a boundary like a gently closed gate, not a slammed door. And what is the effect? When you stop being an ally to reaction, you become a stabilizing presence that others can feel. The atmosphere shifts. Even if the argument continues, it loses its teeth. It cannot borrow your life. Children sense it as safety. Elders sense it as dignity. Spouses sense it as room to breathe. The home is not converted by brilliant verdicts, but by presence. My peace, not their agreement. Please remember, in family conflict, taking no side means refusing to be the instrument of division while still standing in truth. Stand there and let the one govern your house. God is, and that's enough to know. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because when we step from the dining room into the public square, the same hypnotism puts on brighter colors and adds a drumbeat. The message is blunt. If you don't repost, you don't care. If you don't hate, you don't understand. If you aren't loud, you are guilty. You feel that press, don't you? The insistent call to certify your goodness with speed and fury. The threat that if you pause, you will be counted among the enemies. Please remember this. Haste is not holiness, and shame is not guidance. The Spirit never recruits by intimidation. Now then, let us correct the false equations, because without this purification, the conscience becomes a megaphone for fear. Outrage is not love. Oh, no, no, no. It is a heat that spends itself by needing an enemy to survive. Contempt is not intelligence. It is the laziness of a mind that would rather belittle than behold. And taking a side is not the same as taking responsibility. Responsibility in spirit is the capacity to respond from the one, not the compulsion to react for a tribe. When the world says, "Prove your care by your anger," answer inwardly, "I will prove my care by my presence." God is, and that's enough to know. Please follow this. Two-power thinking hijacks spirituality precisely here. We pray, we quote, we invoke the holy, but secretly we rely on the arm of flesh, our tribe, our leader, our ideology to secure us. We place our fear on one altar and our hope on another, and ask God to bless the arrangement. Actually, there is no relationship between spirit and that bargain. They are entirely separate and distinct. You cannot rely on the one and simultaneously enthrone a second power to guarantee outcomes. One must make a choice of one or the other. My kingdom is not of this world. That is the severing line. What then is the disciple's stance in society? It is not withdrawal. It is right reliance. Seek guidance, not consensus. Vote if guided. Serve if guided. Speak if guided. March if guided. But do not let your identity be formed by opposition. Do not let your heart feed on enemies in order to feel alive. We as disciples are not a reaction. We are a transparency. We are not here to put God on our banner. We are here to bear witness that God is the only power, and that from that one, the right word, the right deed, the right protection appears, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit. Now then, secrecy and humility must guard this work, or it will be stolen by performance. Enter into thy closet. Do not broadcast your righteousness. Do not perform virtue to be seen of men. Keep your alms in secret, your fasting in secret, your prayer in secret, that the Father which seeth in secret may reward you openly. The world trades in applause. Spirit works in silence. Every attempt to glorify the human self will deprive us of God's help. Please remember that. Here is your test, simple and absolute. After you have engaged, after you have posted, voted, spoken, marched, what remains? If peace and love remain, if tenderness for all souls increases, if you can bless those who oppose you without bitterness, your action was Spirit-led. My peace, my peace. If agitation remains, if contempt has multiplied, if your heart has narrowed, you have been moved by the world's two-sided mind. Stop, return, be still, and know that I am God. Begin again from the One. You may act in the world, but you must not let the world's two-sided mind act through you. God is, and that's enough to know. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because in the workplace, the gospel of two powers arrives in polished shoes and a calendar invite. Teams form, alliances whisper, projects become territories, and the subtle demand comes to your desk. Pick your people. It sounds harmless, just politics, just who you CC, just which hallway you walk. But please remember this. The moment you pick a people in order to be safe, you have already picked a power that is not God. The office pattern is predictable. Factions stabilize anxiety by creating an us, then feed on an implied them. And you, if you do not know the principle, will spend your peace like small change to buy belonging. Oh, no, no, no. We are not for them and against them. We are for the one. Now then, there is a third position that dissolves the two. Not for that team, not against that team, standing as transparency for intelligence, fairness, and calm. Actually, there is no relationship between spirit and the game of gaining advantage. They are entirely separate and distinct. Spirit is the only power, and where spirit is acknowledged, clarity appears without warfare. You are not there to win the room. You are there to make room for what is true to be seen. This is not passivity. It is authority. It refuses recruitment and becomes a place in consciousness where competing narratives lose their poison because light is given to facts and love is given to persons. How then do you speak without siding? Address facts, not persons. Name impacts, not motives. Propose next steps, not punishments. Here is what occurred on Tuesday. Here is how it affected timeline and trust. Here are 2 remedies we can test by Friday. Do you feel the cleanliness of that? No character assassination. No secret contempt disguised as candor. Firm without venom. Clear without superiority. If a colleague slanders another, refuse the bait. Let us come back to the data and the deliverable. Please remember, Every time you cleanse the language, you withdraw life from the conflict. The two cannot keep breathing without your agreement. Now follow this to its root supply. Why do we side? Fear of consequences. If I don't align with this manager, I will stall. If I don't flatter this group, I will be frozen out. That fear is faith in a second God, human approval as your life. Correct it at once. Your manager is not your source. Your client is not your source. Your salary is not your supply. God is. God is supply. God is opportunity. God is the law of unfoldment. One must make a choice of one or the other. Either people govern your life, or spirit does. When you rest in the one, the terror that drives politicking dissolves, and you become strangely fearless, quietly bold, willing to tell the truth kindly because your safety does not depend on applause. My kingdom is not of this world, therefore I am not for sale to it. And now a practice you can carry in your pocket. Before meetings, 60 seconds only, close the door of the inner closet and listen. Father, reveal thyself as the activity here. On the in-breath, God is. On the out-breath, I do not need to win. Be still and know. Then enter the room as presence, not pressure. Watch how the room reorganizes when one person refuses recruitment. Ideas clarify, heat lowers, decisions simplify. And your test remains unchanged. After the meeting, what remains? If peace remains and respect increases, even among those who disagree, you have stood in the third position that dissolves the two. At work, taking no side means becoming the place where clear intelligence can appear without personal warfare. God is, and that's enough to know. My peace. My peace. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because here is where the mind objects most fiercely. What about abuse? What about exploitation, coercion, threat, violence? Do you mean just be peaceful and let harm continue? Oh, no, no, no. Please remember, the world has used be nice, forgive, keep the peace as muzzles on the vulnerable. That is not spirit. That is manipulation. We are not speaking of passivity. We are speaking of power, of the only power. And the first clarity is this. Recognizing God as the one power never instructs us to ignore danger. It instructs us to refuse hatred as our method and fear as our master, while we take every wise step to protect life. Now then, actually, there is no relationship between spirit and the intoxication of revenge. They are entirely separate and distinct. Revenge is the arm of flesh dressed up for church. It cannot restore order because it feeds on disorder. Spirit is law, order, government. When harm is real, the disciples' stance is not do nothing. It is do the right thing without adding a second God. That right thing may include leaving, reporting, documenting, securing legal protection, engaging authority, naming the wrong plainly. Do you see the distinction? Action, not reaction. Clean firmness, not venom. The deed may be strong, very strong, but the heart is not drunk on punishment. Please remember this sentence as a shield in your own breast. I do not consent to evil as power. I do not consent to fear as power. Let that be the inner covenant as you take the outer step. Before the call, before the boundary, before the testimony, pause, 10 seconds, and anchor. God is. God is law. God is order. God is the life of all being. In that recognition, you are not abdicating responsibility. You are assuming it under divine government. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not because we deny that weapons exist, but because we deny them authority to define us or to dictate our conduct. Justice, then, is not the sweet taste of someone else's humiliation. Oh, no, no, no. Justice is the restoration of right order under divine law, the safeguarding of the vulnerable, the cessation of harm, the truthful naming that allows healing to begin, and the establishment of boundaries that honor all. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Wisdom sees clearly, gathers evidence, acts decisively. Harmlessness refuses hatred as fuel. Both are required. Either one without the other fails the principle. Now follow this in the very moment of heat. The body shakes. The mind demands a strike. Stop. Turn within. Father, thou art my defense and my direction. Then act. Leave if you must. Call if you must. Document while the details are fresh. Speak to those whose office is to intervene. Do not preach to danger. Remove yourself from it and let right channels operate. That is not faith in man. That is faith that spirit governs through channels when we refuse panic as our guide. Afterward, test the fruit. What remains? If peace and a steady compassion remain, compassion even for the confused soul of the offender while you hold the boundary firm, you have acted in God. If a fever of hatred remains, return to the closet, surrender the fever, and be governed anew. God is law. God is order. God is the life of all being. From that one we protect without hatred and resist without two-power thinking. My peace, my peace. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because here the entire fabric of the work is protected or lost. The principle of taking no side must be practiced where no one can applaud you. Not on the platform, not in the feed, not in the clever reply. Oh, no, no, no. Enter into thy closet and close the door. Please remember, the deepest work cannot be done on social media. It is done in silence, where there is no audience to reward your performance and no tribe to certify your virtue. Actually, there is no relationship between spirit and display. They are entirely separate and distinct. One must make a choice of one or the other. Now then, keep your troubles bottled up, in its modern sense, does not mean isolate in danger. It means stop rehearsing grievances publicly and begin bringing them inward to the Father within. Do not recruit friends to nurse your outrage. Do not turn pain into content. Bring it to the one who sees in secret. Thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. The reward is not applause. The reward is peace, clarity, guidance that appears as harmony without your advertising. Please remember this. Every time you narrate your wound to collect sympathy, you glue your identity to the wound. Humility is the mechanism of hearing. As long as the personal self wants to be right, it cannot hear. While the inner attorney is arguing your case, heaven is silent to you. Not because God is far, but because your noise is loud. Yield. Be still. Admit, I do not know, thou knowest. Be grateful if you have no understanding. His understanding is infinite. When the self relaxes its demand to win, guidance comes of itself. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit. Now follow this simple daily discipline. Morning, before the phone, before headlines, sit 3 minutes and recognize one power. On the in-breath, God is. On the out-breath, I need not secure myself. Whisper, only one acts, only one governs, and let the day begin from that government. Midday, when provoked, take the holy pause. 10 to 20 seconds, no posting, no composing, only the inner recognition returning you to the one. Evening, release all unfinished arguments. Lay them on the altar. Father, I return these images to Thee. Judge not, condemn not. Reveal Thy peace. Sleep in God, not in a courtroom. Secrecy purifies motives. When no one knows your prayer, you cannot use it to build a side of your own. You stop taking sides for identity, and you start living from communion. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand doeth. Hiddenness starves vanity. Communion feeds love. Then, without announcement, you find yourself answering softly where you once accused loudly, setting a clean boundary where you once staged a scene, blessing where you once needed to be seen blessing. And the proof? Not that others agree. Oh, no, no, no. The proof is that you carry the peace that passeth understanding into rooms that used to steal it. Test it after the secret work. What remains? If my peace remains, if love enlarges for all without exception, the principle has worked. And it has worked because ego could not use it. God is, and that's enough to know. My peace. My peace. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because this is the simple demonstration. Not with fireworks, not with argument, but with presence. The world will continue to present you with invitations to enlist, with posters for a cause, with the glare of someone's outrage and the whisper of someone's fear. Please remember, the proof of your discipleship is not that the posters come down or that the voices go silent. Oh, no, no, no. The proof is that you do not lend your life to the noise. The proof is that you abide in peace and let Spirit govern your response. We have walked a straight path tonight. Refuse recruitment. Choose Spirit. Act only from peace. Let outer harmonies follow as they will and as they must under divine law. Actually, there is no relationship between peace gained by domination and the peace of God. They are entirely separate and distinct. One must make a choice of one or the other. We as disciples choose the one. God is. God is. God is, and that's enough to know. Do not imagine that this is advanced mysticism that belongs to cloisters and special souls. Oh, no, no, no. This is the simplest obedience. Stop feeding the war with your consciousness. Stop composing the rebuttal that keeps your blood hot. Stop scrolling for the insult that justifies your anger. Stop baptizing your tribe as Savior. Be still and know. God is. That is the whole method, and from that simple recognition, your conduct finds its rightful strength and shape. Now then, let us prove it here, not later, not when the house quiets, but here. Close the inner door for a moment. No words. One breath. On the in-breath, softly, God is. On the out-breath, I do not need to secure myself. Feel the shoulders soften. Feel the jaw release. Feel the room widen just a little, as if space itself were friendly. Notice, without a single fact changed in the outer picture, a presence begins to be felt. Peace precedes wisdom. Out of this stillness, a right word may rise, or no word at all. A firm boundary may set itself without venom. A next step may appear with no tremor in it. This quiet, open, unafraid center is what taking no side feels like in a body. Carry this with you. We are not talking to the world, but to those who would live from spirit. Into the family, be the one who is not a courtroom. Into politics, be the one who is not a megaphone for contempt. Into work, be the one in whom clarity appears without personal warfare. Keep it in secret so that no one can turn it into a performance. Test it continually with the single question: after I have done what I have done, what remains? If my peace remains, if love enlarges for all, then you have not empowered a second God. My peace, my peace. And so we go, not with a banner, but with a breath. God is, God is, God is, and that's enough to know. Abide there, let spirit govern response, and watch how life arranges itself under that government. Thank you. Thank you.